Hey everyone, this is Ashwin Jacob, the host of the New Hollywood podcast. I am really excited to have you guys here today to share with you what New Hollywood is all about. It's a podcast centered around the dreamer that made their dreams into a reality. We're going to have some amazing conversation with everybody from public figures and thought leaders, ranging from celebrities, people in politics, people in pop culture, people in fashion, content creators, and they're going to share with you exactly how they made their dreams happen. We're going to start off sometimes with where they grew up, what motivated them to get into their industry, the actionable steps that they took at the beginning, real life processes of how they're successful today, and sometimes larger ideologies. Hollywood itself was a farm town that a lot of different people from all over the world moved to, founded these interesting partnerships, created unique business models, and really became extremely visible throughout the world. What I really want to do with each of you is share with you my personal network of people that I've met across various industries, people that I admire, bring them on, have real meaningful conversations where we learn the actionable steps to do what it is that they do. And oftentimes you might not be interested in their specific career path, but there's a lot of valuable information from each person that you can adapt to improve the own quality of your life and whatever it is that you're doing. My personal story starts off with moving to Los Angeles with about $500, 3 months worth of rent paid, an air mattress that leaked air that I had to pump air into every night. And I ended up eventually being a founding member of Vario Studios, where we rep some of the most amazing content creators, athletes, and traditional celebrities. And it was an amazing learning opportunity for me to learn the value of relationships. I've been lucky and fortunate enough to be part of the teams of people such as Terrell Owens, one of the top 10 NFL athletes of all times, arguably one of the top 2 wide receivers and a Hall of Fame athlete. I've been able to work with Jody Steele, growing her from a smaller content creator to a name that has worked with some of the top Fortune 500 brands. We've also worked with stars such as Gabby Hanna, who's massive on Vine, watched her progress into other social media platforms, and eventually signed with CAA. We really want to give you a balanced view at different people's perspectives so that you can really get a holistic understanding how to take things to that next level. So I'm really excited to have all of you here on the New Hollywood journey with us. Be sure to follow, like, subscribe, and download to stay in touch with everything New Hollywood. Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you to the new episode of the New Hollywood podcast. Today, we have Jen Friel. She's an amazing personality. Currently, she is the CMO of Drop In Inc. She previously has ran a blog called Talk Nerdy to Me Lover, where she chronicles her story of quitting her job, traveling around, bartering, and also going on 103 dates over a period of 9 months. Where I like to start it off with everybody, Jen, other than thanking you for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you.
Is where do you come from and what kind of got you interested in making the move to LA?
Oh, where do I come from? The honest answer is I feel like a faraway galaxy. I've always sort of felt a bit like an alien. The real answer is West Hartford, Connecticut, and born in Bristol. But I don't know. I just always knew that even from a super young age, as young as like 5 and 6, watching Saved by the Bell, that California was absolutely where I was going. So I was really lucky in that I was at least kind of smart in school. So I was able to finish high school at 16 with honors. And then I worked for a year and then moved to New York City when I was 17 and took every class that I could under the sun at Lee Strasberg because I wanted to work in entertainment, but tech was always my fallback. So I had my first company when I was 8. So my parents were like, cool, go pursue entertainment, but you'll be fine because you'll still get a job in tech. And then I moved out to LA when I was 19. So tale as old as time, as I'm sure you can relate to as well, where it's, find an apartment on Craigslist, 4 roommates, $300 to your name. You drive out cross country for 3 days and you just kind of figure it out as you go.
That's a trip. Now, how did you go about getting into the tech scene in LA?
Well, so I've been in tech my whole life. So I started typing when I was 2. And like I said, I had my first little computer company when I was 8. I used to teach adults. I'm 33, almost 34, just for reference. But I used to teach adults how to use programs like WordPerfect and Juno and Prodigy. And it was just very basic word processing skills of like how to type up a resume, like how to search on this thing called the web and how to write an email. It was all very, very simple, but it was just something that I got immediately. And then in 2006, I started working for indirect cellular activations. And I was involved in that and managed 80 accounts across Southern California. I was basically brought in to prove that chicks couldn't sell cellular activations, and wound up leaving the company as one of the top reps. And then just worked for one of the founders of MySpace and launched his startup called Live Video. I was a plant on the site and got to understand this thing called life casting. We were competitors to YouTube at the time, and we would take a netbook, a USB card, and literally just this little camera, because it was pre-cell phone days, and we would go around to various events and things and just document our lives, and that's sort of what we did. But the second that the company went under, I was like, wait a minute, I want to do this. This was like my passion. I felt like I found a calling in terms of, talking to these people, and I had 600,000 subscribers in 2007 and 8. Like that's crazy.
You're an influencer before there was such a term.
Literally, yeah. But I wasn't even the influencer. I was a plant. So it's really funny. I worked with Jungle Boy, who's now Supricky on YouTube. Like we've all kind of wound up doing our own things in the space. But to me, I didn't necessarily want to be a YouTuber because people barely took me seriously on live video. They're like, oh, you're not a nerd, or oh, you're not this. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, if I wear glasses and if I start a blog and focus on writing, can I do exactly what I want to do and still, have my own level of happiness in the process? And that's exactly what I did.
See, I think that's what's really interesting is I'm an Indian guy in entertainment, and I do nothing that's like on the technical side of technology. Like I consult on strategy and optimization and the sexy part of that business.
Yeah.
Whereas stereotypically, most people would be, if I wanted to apply for any tech role, my name is going to sound perfect. And when I walk in, I'm going to look exactly like what they think like a programmer or an engineer would work.
Absolutely. That's a really interesting point as well, because again, I would never even, we've known each other now for, a handful of years, but it's like, I wouldn't discredit you for a second because of the way that you look. But for me, it was literally as simple as just putting on glasses and black frames, which then eventually wound up being sponsored, that people genuinely did start to take me seriously as a nerd.
No, I think it's a trip because even as a woman in technology, a lot of times there are female coders that are probably better than a lot of guy coders, and most people don't give them a shot just because of that presumption. How do you go about like kind of challenging a lot of these norms? Like you said, you were hired to prove that a woman couldn't sell.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, and it's funny, I just had this conversation the other day, like I've gotten really lucky in the sense that I personally happen to like challenges, and I don't view it as anything negative when someone says something like that to me. And I was told the majority of this straight to my face, that like, you don't understand tech, you don't understand how to sell. And I'm like, okay, instead of getting mad at it, I was like, watch me win. And I just stick my head down and work really hard. But the thing is being a woman in a traditional man's world in terms of, that any sort of job positioning, all it does is open the door for you. I can at least get an interview because people are like, oh, she has a good voice over the phone, or, ooh, I want to meet this chick. She could be hot. But then I have to walk through the door and then prove myself and then, prove that I'm actually capable. But I think it's easier, at least from my perspective, being a woman. They leave me alone a lot more too. I'm less micromanaged because I think that they just kind of expect you to fail. Now, not as much, but in my earlier career, absolutely.
I think it's also intimidation. I think men in workplaces are also very aware of how something could be misconstrued. But there's also extra levels of sensitivity.
Well, see, I think that's interesting, at least. And again, I can only go back to, cellular activations within that capacity. But it's like, oh no, they loved that I was like 21, 22. I wore corporate clothing, but they loved having young women in the office as much as possible. And albeit I wasn't sexually harassed within the company, but anytime I went out in the field, that's one of the reasons why I left. It just gets to a point where you're like, this isn't worth my time anymore. It just starts to sacrifice too much of your mental sanity. And it's just like, this isn't worth it. There's no amount of money that's worth literally walking in every single day, getting a how you doing and all of the above. It got to a point where I'm like, again, I'm better than this.
Yeah, it's like the beauty pageant queens that end up selling like pharmaceutical reps.
Yeah, but that's great. You can make so much money doing this stuff. It's
you
crazy.
You got to know your hustle and leverage your skill set. Like a lot of times, a lot of women are taught to hide sensuality or hide their sexuality or even hide beauty, which I think is wrong. I don't think people should really hide who they are.
Yeah, you see, yes and no. I can go on both sides of the fence in that, in terms of like even just what I'm wearing today. Like walking down the street, I purposely put in headphones because I don't want to hear any sort of cat calls. But it's like I know how to market myself as a woman and how to get leverage of that in terms of extra eyeballs, which is phenomenal because it's like, wow, this is great being a woman. But then also too, on the flip side, you view it as a liability in terms of, okay, you know, that guy's been staring at me for a really long time. Like, if I walk to my car right now, if I leave a drink, like, could something happen? So it's a give and take. I prefer to live sort of more of a balanced life in that, in the sense that I don't feel the need to walk out of the house with 20 pounds of makeup on my face every second of the day. But I mean, in terms of being a marketer, I'm very happy that I'm a woman.
No, I definitely agree with you. And if you left a drink, something bad would probably happen.
Yeah, well, actually, I did. I got drugged at a bar many moons ago. I was trying to get over this fear on Talk Nerdy, and I was petrified of sitting at a bar by myself. And I had this company reach out to me, and they had all these T-shirts with different locations on it. So I was like, oh, this is really cool. I just want to wear your shirts at a bar. I want to get over this fear myself anyway. And I'll meet someone maybe potentially from that hometown. At least gave someone an opener to come up and talk to me, which is what I was interested in. And all I know is that I blinked. I took a shot from this gentleman, these two gentlemen and this other gal. I blinked, put my bag around my chest, and then woke up 12 hours later. It was one of my Twitter followers on the floor of my own bathroom, by the way. It was one of my Twitter followers who sometime around midnight said, I know this chick, this is Jen Friel, and all the documentation that I was doing on my life actually literally saved my life, because he goes, she doesn't go home with dudes from bars. He goes, I'm taking her. And he literally put me over his shoulder and, again, woke up the next day being like, what just happened?
It's scary. I mean, I've actually been roofied about 3 or 4 times now.
Oh, wow.
Mostly because I go out with a lot of girls, and unless there's a weird person that's been following me around that has an Indian guy fetish, which I think is unlikely, versus, the group of beautiful women that I think, and the fact that it's a vodka soda drink. But it's literally one of the worst feelings in the world.
Yeah.
You pretty much instantaneously lose recognition of where you are. And then you puke pretty much the whole next day.
Oh yeah, no, it felt like I had the flu for at least a handful of days. I feel like it was actually closer to a week. But what's interesting from the male perspective on that is that happens to my guy friends a lot in either Vegas or Miami or just big cities like that, in the sense that these women just want to rob you. So, and actually back in the day, it was like 10 years ago, some good friends of mine from West Hartford actually got robbed by these women. They were unfortunately roofied, and then they wound up getting robbed, and they put the rejection hotline number in lipstick on the mirror as like an additional kind of kick to them in the...
That's so cold. That's like ruthless.
Yeah. But I'm like, I don't even know if the rejection hotline's a thing anymore, but I was like, not only is it horrible that happened to them, and then obviously getting robbed, but I'm like, the rejection hotline number, like, come on, man.
Well, what's kind of crazy about that is in today's day and age, it's sometimes weird if you approach somebody in like a real personal setting. So most people are going towards online dating. And I know we briefly touched on it as we got in here. How have your experiences been with Tinder, Bumble, and like you've mentioned that you've been able to actually use it for business too?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I guess maybe I'm at a different stage of my life now, being 33, almost 34. I have zero problem walking up to dudes and even approaching them as the woman. I mean, it was hilarious. We were walking down the street. I was with my attorney. This is like maybe like a month and some change ago. And he was just saying how frustrated he was with online dating. I'm like, there are people everywhere. I was like, and I literally stopped this guy with his group of friends. I was like, hey, are you single? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, I'm single too. I was like, do you find me attractive? And he's like, absolutely. I was like, okay, great. Let me get your number. Like, it really is kind of that simple, but I feel like it's our own ego
Most people
protection.
are scared.
Yeah, exactly. But like, once you get over that fear of like doing it, it's like the Neil Strauss sort of mentality. And I used to be actually a wing girl for him back in the day, but it's that same mentality of like just repetitive patterns. And then you recognize like, wow, that guy could have told me no. And I would have been like, great, congratulations. Okay, cool. Have a great night, and moving on. But I was really lucky. I accidentally have a career now in just, tech in general because of my online dating, which was crazy because I, back in, 2010, I just signed up for OkCupid because I was working so much. And my girlfriend was like, you got to get laid, man. You got to like, put yourself out there. And so OkCupid back in the day used like an algorithm matching to get you dates. So I wanted to break the pattern of dating douchebags. And after 103 dates in 9 months, I recognized that I was the douchebag. So there were, which is amazing because I have a shaman who reached out and totally helped me become less of a douchebag. But the statistics were 103 dates. There were 11 second dates. There were 6 guys I slept with. There were 4 that I wanted more from, but all 4 were emotionally unavailable. So now in terms of my online dating, which again, I'm still on, but I've been in amazing relationships since this. And I'm super happy about that. I've done things very much offline, but yeah, now my Bumble profile reads, your dick pic is my gift game. Show me what you got.
That's funny.
Well, because I have a dear friend of mine, actually one of my best friends, he looked at my online profile and he's like, Jen, you reveal too much about yourself, because I'm such a full disclosure type person. And now being this person, for so many years that's documented dating, I felt the need to still tell people that I have this blog, even though my blog and my life aren't one and the same anymore. So it was actually fascinating. I studied the numbers in terms of between Tinder and Bumble. I averaged 434 messages each week. 1 in 217 actually get a date. And it took close to 70 before I got my very first dick pic.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of writing a post on it, which is how I know these statistics. But
that's some serious data. I'm like, wow, you're really on top of it.
Well, no, because I'm fascinated by it, because like that's how, I'm sure as you understand too,
Yeah.
like I'm so curious in terms of optimizing things and how to make them kind of more efficient. And I sat there like even earlier this year on Facebook, and I was like, why don't I have time to read anymore? And it's because I caught myself just sitting there on Facebook scrolling. So I immediately deleted the app. And I'm at that similar stage right now between Tinder and Bumble, where I'm like, okay, like I really do. I genuinely meet great guys, but between either my schedule or theirs, it's not that easy. And it's like also too, I'm just not that really interested in some of these guys. And, that to me means that online dating isn't really nearly as efficient as I thought it is. But what is amazing is that I'm making connections with some of these people. So even if it's not romantic, I've met some phenomenal business contacts through it. And, it doesn't matter that we met on, OkCupid, Tinder, Bumble, or at the grocery store. A contact's a contact.
So how was it being a wing woman for Neil Strauss?
Oh, goodness. So is this gal, I got recruited. She has this company and it's called the Wing Girl Method. And her name's Marnie. And it's always been such a huge part of my heart in helping people. And that's what really the blog was about, was like, hey guys, like, okay, here it is from the female perspective. And then I didn't know, like at first, that so many dudes were the ones actually reading my website. So I became this like unofficial guru to all these men. So working with Neil was phenomenal, because it was like I got to have an IRL version of like what the blog was like. And it was still to this day like top 10 of one of the best nights of my life, watching these guys go from, super shy, not able to talk to anybody. Because it really is, social dynamics is about like the social aspect of it, of learning to talk to people. It's not necessarily about getting laid, getting the woman. It's like base step is, can you talk to this person? Can you open up a conversation? Like opening up a set is what they call it. Like, can you actually open up and talk to someone, and then don't ask anything from them. Like ask for the time, and then, okay, great. Then walk away. Now, like go over to this group over here and sit down. Okay, how did that make you feel? But don't have an expectation of getting a number. Don't have the expectation of having sex. Just ask them something, oh, if there's a game on, oh, is this any of your guys' team? Okay, cool. And they sit there for 5 minutes and then they come right back to you. And you watch gradually these guys go from, barely being able to talk to someone to then getting numbers at the end of the night. I'm still getting chills, like even having this conversation, because like just their faces. And we did like, again, like a Say by the Bell high five, because I make things really corny and cheesy, but to watch someone have that much measurable growth in such a short period of time. I mean, this was literally one night at a time that we would take them out in the field. And, Neil had his sessions and workshops and whatnot before that. But it, for me, was so unbelievably fulfilling just watching these people. And I'm still friends with some of them, and I see their updates on Facebook, and it's just, it's incredible. But I think it's, again, not about just getting laid. It's not about getting a number or talking to chicks. It's learning kind of how to get out of your head and into the real world, if you will.
Real interpersonal communications.
Absolutely.
A lot of what I do is I coach businesses, I coach people. And the biggest issue is most people don't love themselves first.
Absolutely.
They're seeking the love from the other person. Whereas the first thing I tell people to do is exactly what you said, which is forget any expectation. Don't ask who's going to be there. So one of my biggest turnoffs in people is I go to a lot of events. I have a lot of interesting friends. But if I'm hanging out with somebody famous and that's the reason you want to hang out, I don't want to hang out with you.
No, absolutely
And if you're
not.
going in with the intention of I'm going to this party to meet this famous person and I'm expecting something out of them, you're going to have a horrible time and a horrible expectation. Whereas if you just go in with an open heart and open mind and you just interact with whoever you end up interacting with, you'll probably be 10 times more successful in your interpersonal life, your dating life, and everything across the board.
Absolutely. Well, like is constantly attracting like. So it's one of these situations where, if you're seemingly needy in whatever capacity, you're going to come off as needy, but you're not at that level of self-awareness to actually recognize that yet. You know what I mean? So it's like our minds in that capacity are like an onion, and it's just constantly peeling away these layers. But you're 100% right too. It really does come from yourself. But I also feel like that's really corny to say. Like that's actually one of my tattoos. I got this when in 2006, and I was like, I just want to learn to love myself, so let me get a tattoo. And it's like, but what does that actually mean? You know what I mean? And now like I can look back at 33 and 34, still
confidence.
Exactly.
That's really what it is.
Still loving this tattoo,
yourself, yeah.
But it really is. It's like it's one of these things where you can't necessarily just say that to someone. It genuinely does come from life experience, and it comes from also too just I just took my first vacation in almost 4 years just last week. It's like that level of self-care as well is so huge. And again, that's something I'm still working on and setting certain boundaries, but that's also like how you learn to love yourself. But I think it's just corny when people put like, love yourself like on a wall or like a meme and to thy own self be true. It's just like, we love to preach it, but how many of us are actually practicing? And myself included with that.
I mean, I'm talking about a basic level. Most guys and most girls are unafraid to even have that conversation of, what are we? Absolutely. Or if somebody's sexually attracted to someone, they're afraid to ask.
Oh, totally.
It's a very awkward conversation in like 2018 now when people like each other. It's just usually drunken encounters. And it's so funny to me because I don't really drink that much and I don't really see the need in it. And I'm very direct. So if somebody wants to see me or even hang out in a business or in a social setting, let me know when, where, and the time.
Yeah.
And if you can't provide that, then I don't have time for it because so much time is just wasted in meaningless conversations that go nowhere.
Absolutely. But I think it's actually always been this way. And I didn't know this until my 10-year high school reunion, how many guys had crushes on me and they were just very scared of me. So they just never said anything. And from my perspective, I'm like, wow, no one's talking to me. So obviously I'm a loser. This is, you know what I mean? Like we all kind of end up telling ourselves these narratives in our head. But I don't think in 2018, it's any different than it has been previously. I think our grandparents and our great grandparents have all told us this fabulous story of finding their, lover, their husband, whatever, like at, we went to school together. And myself included, my parents actually met in grade school and have been together their entire lives. So I actually live that narrative. But I think it's kind of one of these situations.
It's like a sitcom narrative.
It really is. Yeah. They just celebrated 46 years together yesterday and they're on vacation right now. But my mother walked into a 7th grade class and my father took one look at her in the red sweater, which he posted on Facebook yesterday, the exact photo. And he walked in and said, that's her. That's it. He had already made a list of all of the qualities that he wanted in a woman because we're Irish and that's what you do when you're in 7th grade. And it basically consisted of blonde, cooks, likes me, pretty, just like really like basic things. But again, that they're statistically speaking like an anomaly. And, I've seen firsthand how much hard work it is to be married and the communication that's constantly required and all of the above. It's not a happily ever after, even though it is for them. It really does take a phenomenal amount of work. But I think in terms of how things were back in the day is we had different standards for different things. It's like if a woman, if a couple had sex and a woman got pregnant, it was like, well, you had to get married or she had to go away and and or have an abortion or something like that. She couldn't be seen, So it's like, it was just a very different sort of world. But I think fundamentally speaking, we're all sort of creating our own issues in the process that none of us really know what we're doing. And the fact that any of us are here and alive, is remarkable.
Do you think people are just overcomplicating it? Because the reason I find out that a lot of my friends are breaking up or are single is people just have so many different expectations. They're not just taking it down to we really only have today. We don't have tomorrow and we don't have yesterday.
Well, I think people communicate differently. And I mean, there's a bunch of different ways that you can look at this. You know, some people are into astrology, some people are into like Myers-Briggs. One book that was kind of helpful for me in terms of dating was like understanding someone's love language. So like the way that you give and receive love is very different or might be exactly the same in the way that I receive love. Like for me, it's like noticing like, oh, I seem a little stressed out. So like, oh, here, some flowers today, or like a bottle of wine. I love wine. Things like that, like, or someone that just takes care of something. So it's like, I'm not constantly feeling like I'm the one that has to do everything all the time. That balance and reciprocity in the dynamic is hugely important to me. But for other people, it's like spending quality time together. You know, we just have, or touching someone, you know, I like to hold hands, and that's how they receive their fulfillment in terms of love, but we're all different. And so if you don't have those conversations with your partner in terms of what their needs are, like it's, how can you be in a relationship? But then it's also too, it takes a level of awareness to even know to ask those questions. So again, like the fact that any of us are here is just so fascinating to my brain, let alone sexual chemistry, let alone all of the other things that come into play. It's pretty remarkable that where the world's as populated as it is.
Back to the basic initial encounter, since most people are approaching people on Tinder or Bumble, and you talked about hundreds of different people that you've chatted with. Yeah. What's the best and what's the worst opener?
Well, worst opener is definitely a penis pic. But again, it happens shockingly
Depends.
less.
What if it's perfectly lit?
But see, oh man, wait, okay. So this actually is hilarious. And then I'll get back to your question with this, especially with penis pics, because now I've seen so many of them.
They never look good.
Yeah, well, no, a handful actually did, but I just wondered if it was like a professional photo shoot. And then in my head, I was like, was this guy in porn? And I actually had a friend try setting me up with a gentleman that was in the porn industry, and it's hilarious because now I'll just, log on to YouPorn or whatever, and I'm just like, I can't even watch his porn because like I couldn't date him, I couldn't have anything to do with him, and I'm like, and he's still around, and I'm like, this is so creepy. But in terms of dick pics, it's just hilarious how some dudes are just so proud of like what they're presenting, and like they have no idea or awareness of like, again, certain angles, or making sure you're not in the bathroom when you're doing it. I don't need to see a toilet in the background.
And a selfie never looks great.
No. I feel like that should be a thing. I feel like, please, someone out there, like, write, either a blog post or something on like how to take a good dick pic. I mean, I don't have one, so I can only.
It sounds like a BuzzFeed article.
Right, exactly.
Sure.
Like, as a female, I can at least say like, okay, like there it is. Like, and just dick pics in general for women, it's like, maybe if we're dating, I'd be kind of into it, but I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? Like, what like, am I supposed to say that like I'm super attracted to you because of this thing? I'm like, no, I'm not that person in general. And I'm like, and now I've just disrespected you because this is all that you have to lead with. Come on.
And it also ends up usually in a female group thread.
Yeah.
That's usually where those things end up.
Oh, everywhere. Like just, and I don't, but it's funny because anytime I'm in a relationship or once you start to seriously date someone, I take all of those conversations like off the table. Like I might say like, oh, wow, this is, really cool. But I'm like, before that, absolutely every ounce of it before that, like all my girlfriends, my very close girlfriends, my, gay best friend, like all of the above, they pretty much know how satisfying or how not satisfying an experience was. But, you're tasteful as well in the sense that you just don't, name their name or, we're not like that. But it is funny. That's kind of just how women operate in terms of our, interpersonal dynamics is that's how we share things.
I think it's also really interesting because nowadays most people are texting.
Yeah.
They're not even picking up a phone and having a conversation with their significant other.
Yeah. Well, I think it needs to be a balance. I'm not a huge texter. And that was actually one of the things that coming back from Burning Man made me kind of aware of exactly me saying that sentence and then recognizing like, oh my God, I'm like, my phone just pings all day. I'm like, so I'm working to kind of actively change that. But I'm really lucky in the sense that I actually see my friends like every other day, every week we all get together. Like we make the face-to-face, actually, not even just the phone. We make the face-to-face very important because it's that to me is so much more fulfilling than, I'm going to send you this text. Hi, how are you? Like if I cared, I'm going to show up. If I am texting you back and forth being like, hi, how are you? And not showing up, then that means that we're not as good of friends as you thought we were, or I thought we were.
No, that's a trip. I mean, I get 350 text messages a day.
You get 350?
350 a day, wow. About 50 to 75 DMs, either daily or bi-daily.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like a high frequency thing. And 90% of them are just people wanting stuff.
Wow.
Like it's not even a conversation anymore. And I actually kind of prefer it sometimes. I'm like, don't have me have 7 text messages about how the day is before you just ask me. Just ask me. If I can help, I'm usually happy to help.
Well, then I wonder, that's your personality type in general, which is why, I've always respected you. But like, I wonder in that regard, if it like even makes sense to get some sort of like burner phone of like your actual friends. So it's like, cause it's the dinging, it's the ping, ping, ping. Like I put my phone now on do not disturb in airplane mode a lot because it's like, especially if I'm working on something creative, you've just interrupted my flow, and anytime that I'm with anyone in person, like if I'm on a date or if I'm out with my friends, that phone is not visible. That phone is on vibrate or again, I put on the do not disturb mode. So if God forbid something crazy is happening and you call twice, it will ring. But I am like face to face right there. I would go absolutely insane with that many amount of text messages. But again, I wonder if there's a value to having some sort of like burner phone for your close friends. I don't know.
See, I'm actually trying to get it to clear out every message and email by the end of the day. I've been really bad at it over the past like couple months, but I'm going to take the next 2 weeks, optimize and just reduce it to just the couple hours that I want to spend doing emails and text messages, and the rest of the day live my actual life.
But see, that's the thing. And this is what, coming back from Burning Man and whatnot that I found so fascinating was, one of the biggest takeaways that I had from there was that, and what I've known in general is that we're all communicating with each other, but we're not communicating with each other. It's like text messages and even emails. I mean, that's like a correspondence. That's not communication by definition. So it's like, yes, okay, you're talking to this other person, quote unquote, but it's a correspondence. They can't hear inflection. They can't hear tone. And I feel like, I haven't studied this, but I feel like there's got to be some sort of like registry in terms of fulfillment in our brains.
80 to 90% of everything that we do is nonverbal communication.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's when you're actually, kind of face to face with someone and it's sort of, viewing them. But it's like we're in constant quote unquote connection and communication with each other, but there's such a phenomenal disconnect that again, it's like having, and I moved to an island a handful of years ago, but when I was down there, I learned like true intimacy in terms of I have 3 best friends and we saw each other every day, but I'm like, it is exhausting to have anything more than that. I'm like, I can't keep up. And that to me taught me, and it was so, again, personally fulfilling because I'm like, this is amazing. We were either at their house for dinner or mine or on a boat or fishing or whatever. But it's like those 3 relationships at that point in time were everything and
They're
anything more. Yeah, but that's exactly it. So it's like we're all complaining that, our happiness levels and whatnot are, tanking. And it's like, but here we are all still doing the same things, texting and Facebooking and again, quote unquote, connecting with people. But I feel like we're using it as a distraction to get to, our own level of fulfillment.
Yeah, it's an overload.
Absolutely. Because then if we're distracted and if we're focused on all these other things, and especially with Facebook, with getting the dopamine in terms of notifications, it's like we don't have to deal with ourselves. We can just focus on the picture that we're painting to the world. We don't have to actually sit there and work on ourselves and have this level of intimacy with people, because it's hard to be vulnerable in front of someone at first. And it still is.
Scary.
It's always scary.
It's scary as fuck.
Exactly. So it's so much easier to just send a text message and a Facebook and a DM and all of the above. But to actually sit with someone and learn so much about them and spend that time and energy and have that level of intimacy is everything. But it's so hard because, again, it takes 2 to tango. You have to be vulnerable in the process.
No, definitely. And I think a really cool segue from that would be, how was that experience launching Talk Nerdy to Me Lover and leaving your job, having no money and just bartering and going on these dates? How was that experience? How did that come together?
I mean, Talk Nerdy to Me Lover, I still get chills even just thinking about it. It changed my life in every way, shape, and form. So when I started it, and speaking of happiness and fulfillment, technically during when I had that job in indirect cellular activation, I wound up having a nervous breakdown. I was put on a 5150. I did it myself too, which is kind of hilarious. Not that any of this is hilarious. And again, if you do have any sort of mental illness, I tremendously recommend in reaching out to people. I don't mean it in that capacity, but I just hit a point one day where I started crying, didn't know why, had suffered from depression for years and years and years, and was on various antidepressants that I feel like made me more depressed. And just hit a break, walked into a drug rehab thing of all places, and just said I needed help. But it was such a phenomenal experience. I was there for only 48 hours. I was able to talk my way out of it, actually, and which is super scary because you just recognize immediately, you're like, I'm literally on lockdown, and I did this to myself. So instead of panicking, you just recognize I have to be as sane and logical as possible right now. And I was learning to literally pull myself up by my bootstraps if I was even allowed to keep my shoelaces, which they take away from me, by the way. But it was such a blessing because I walked out of there always my whole life thinking I was crazy because I could just see trends and I can see things, predict things, not like in like a psychic way or anything like that, but in like oh wow, I see this coming down the road.
Logic.
Exactly. Like it's still coming down the road. The truck is coming down the road. And, if you're not in a position where, you have a direct line to either like an executive and or you're an executive yourself, it's phenomenally frustrating because you're trying to climb this quote unquote corporate ladder and you keep getting knocked down because, whoever's above you recognizes you as a threat. And I recognized immediately, I was like, obviously this is not for me. This is not my world. But having that paperwork was so awesome. I'm like, look, I'm not crazy. This is great. And so I just wanted, and he told me, he's like, you're very, very smart. And he goes, you're very creative. And he goes, that's going to lead you directly to a wall if you do not figure out how to structure your own life and figure it out for yourself. And he goes, but you'll be able to do it. And so I actually did. And I had been doing a bunch of different things. I actually wrote the online bio. So I had left the job in cellular activations and then was working for live video, like I said. And then on the side, I was writing the online bio for Bertram Van Munster, who's the creator of Cops and has done everything. He rebranded National Geographic from like scientists to like being in the field. He's like friends with like 10 seated presidents. So I'm like writing his bio, like reading all this stuff that he's done in his life. And I was just like, how do people do this? Like, where do you like get sort of that impetus of like, living such a cool life? And I had no idea. But all I knew is that I really, really liked life casting. And I really, really liked that sort of, style of it. So November 3rd, 2009, I went to this tech conference, the 140 conference. And I was just kind of took a look around and saw these nerds, these people, self-proclaimed nerds that were actually hot. And I was like, oh my God, nerds being hot is going to be a thing. Because I'd been going to all these tech conferences because of, Verizon and working in cellular activations. So I had seen, the sort of trend of what that universe was like. And all of a sudden it was dramatically different. So I was like, nerds are going to be hot. This is my thing. I just need to like take my timestamp on these trends and ideas that I have and I'm going to get a job from it. Someone's going to read it. Someone's going to hire me I've always been a constant networker and hustler. So I was like, I'll just be able to send them a link and this is going to be my resume. Like, I don't want to do LinkedIn. I don't want to do any of that. I just want this blog. And
it tells more of a story than just a resume.
Exactly. Because it's like, you're not sitting there saying you can do something, you're doing it yourself. And that was the thing, especially then and now more than ever, we have all of the tools right in front of us. So if you want to be a singer, if you want to be an actor, anything, like it's so much easier to get exposure. I took $10 to my name and had my blog sell to Jerry Bruckheimer and Warner Brothers. Bruckheimer bought my life rights twice. I was in a 4-way bidding war between ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox. I've repackaged it myself. It took 19 months, and I am presenting it now to A-listers that I couldn't even believe I would ever get in the room with. And I never slept my way to the top. I never did anything other than work my butt off to get there. But that was exactly it. I just every single day threw myself into this blog, and it was one adventure after another. But it was actually crashing the Grammys that was really the sort of tipping point of like, whoa, like where there's a will, there's a way. And I heard that Pete Cashmore was coming into town, and he's the founder of Mashable. And for any of you that know, he looks like Brad Pitt, and he's quite attractive. So he was single at the time. So I was like, well, every king needs a queen, so I'm going to meet him. So I started a daily tweet to Pete, where I basically would send him from Talk Nerdy Me Lover. I would tweet it out on the blog, but I would send it to him and be like, is that a puppy going into the motel? want to come find it with me? Like, it was actually kind of creepy, like, which I'm actually really glad he never got a restraining order against me. But I did. And I remember going on Ustream the morning before, and I said to everybody, I was like, I knew Pete was going to be on the red carpet. I had exhausted all of my connections, just through, as you know, the random people that you end up knowing by being in Los Angeles. I could not get a ticket to the red carpet. So I just did it myself, and I got through 6 checkpoints. And
how'd you pull that off? Because those are very strict.
They're very strict. Yeah. So it took, I thought
at first,
the
right name to get past the first person.
But that's the thing. But I never dropped names. I tried dropping my own name. So I was trying to not lie too much in the process, because I don't know, I guess it was kind of, I don't know if I can call it my own integrity, but it wasn't like I was like, I'm, Julia Roberts' best friend. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to go that route, because I just didn't think it would get me very far. And considering that, people might actually be there, it kind of seemed stupid. So it was all straight luck in how it happened. I started by, broadcasting on Ustream, and I had my phone in my left hand, and I was just saying, hey guys, I'm live. I figured I could just push past security, because they would just think, oh, this person's obviously some sort of reporter. I was all dressed up, but I barely had enough makeup on. I didn't look like I was going to the Grammys, because I had woken up not feeling that great that morning, but I woke up late too. So I was like, I just have to go. Like, it's happening now. Let's go.
Gotta give it a try.
Yeah, exactly. So I just literally grabbed a dress from my closet, put on what I thought was a fancy necklace, and just ran with it. And so I tried it first, just walking in, and immediately got shut down. So then, because I'd woken up sick, there was a little tickle in my throat. So I saw a vending machine by the parking garage. So I was like, okay, cool. I was like, I'll just get a Diet Coke, because I was like, whatever. Got the Diet Coke. And then I saw, once I was by the parking garage, when everyone was looking left, over by the right, there was no security. So what I did was I grabbed the soda, and I just kept walking. Like, I had come back from the backstage area, and I got through checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, checkpoint 3, checkpoint 4. And then I wound up getting stopped by the one checkpoint area where I couldn't go through were these 2 cops. And I then wanted to avoid them like the plague, because I was like, I don't need to get arrested. So I walked over to this gal who was some sort of check-in, and I was like, oh, hi, I'm just picking up passes. My name's Jen Friel. And she's like, no, not on this list. I was like, oh, my publicist mustn't have put it through yet. I was like, okay, let me at least see what I can do and make a phone call. So I then, took 2 steps back, stood right next to the cops, because directly next to them was how I could get past the gate. So basically I pretended that my phone rang, like it came from my publicist. I did this thing where I kind of arched my back and then pretended that I dropped down to my foot, and then made the phone vibrate like it was a ring, pretended it was my publicist, that they just saw me talk to this person, and then dipped right past them. So that's how I got that through the last checkpoint. Okay. And then now I'm sitting there, and, it was right onto the red carpet, the very, very final checkpoint. And there was just this little table. It was like a little card table. I took a picture of my feet. So I'm documenting as much of this as I can, because even if I didn't, crash the Grammys to meet Pete Cashmore, I was going to fail at crashing the Grammys, sit in jail for 24 hours.
It's a great story.
Pay some sort of fine and be like, you know what? Here's how to not crash the Grammys. So no matter what, there was just such a win behind this. So I'm sitting at this little, this cardboard table, and I have to have a screenshot of this tweet still and find it. But I just checked Twitter, and because again, I'm tweeting Pete the whole time saying I'm crashing the Grammys. That's how I became such good friends with Ben Parr, who was his editor-in-chief at the time, because he's like, we are not responsible for this. This is crazy. No one can do this, whatever. And so I'm on Twitter, and I see this tweet, and it says, walk if you can, crawl if you must, but whatever you do, don't give up. And I'm like, okay, corny, dramatic cliches in life genuinely exist, because in that moment, I saw a guy who had all of these red carpet passes around his neck. And I don't know who these women were, but they were all in these dresses, and they were about to be photographed. So he was holding their passes. I dipped in right behind them and got right onto the red carpet. Completely freaked out, of course. It's because now I'm like, now what? I didn't plan actually getting onto the red carpet. So I start taking pictures and going on Ustream being like, okay, well, I have to document this. I actually did crash the Grammys red carpet. This is amazing. Security guard stops me, and I'm like, oh, this is it. I was like, okay, but I made it here. And he goes, just not any non-professional cameras don't have licenses, so you can't, go turn off your cell phone, basically. And I was like, that's it? So I snuck into Access Hollywood, just like literally just chilling, hanging out. Like, as the celebrities and whatnot are walking down the red carpet, there's all these like cameramen. Some are like over the box, some are under. It's like, you've seen red carpets.
Yeah, no, I've been in a lot.
Exactly. Like but especially for award shows, they're unbelievably insane and disorganized. But everyone assumes at that point, if you're there, that you're accepted and you're in. So
it's like any exclusive party. If you're there, you're already somebody.
Exactly. So I started talking to Access Hollywood, and I even gave him pointers, the camera guy and the photographer. I was like, that's Zach Brown Band. I was like, Lincoln Park. I stood shoulder to shoulder next to Chester, rest in peace. And I have pictures of like Mike from Jersey Shore walking down. But I was on the red carpet for less than 10 minutes. And then, I kid you not, Pete Cashmore actually showed up. And I'm just in a state of shock at this point, because I'm like, not only did I actually execute this, but I found him. I was like, what? Who does this happen to? So I do, of course, the most appropriate thing that you do in that moment. I walked up to him and said, Pete, I recognized you by your jawline. And because he has a very distinctive jawline, I was in such a state of shock. I had been on The Price is Right when I was 19 and actually won and spun the wheel and, was with Bob, all of the above, made it to Showcase Showdown. So it's the only 2 times in my life that I've truly had a complete out of body moment. So he was with one of the founders of YouTube that I didn't know this at the time. So Pete was very gracious and he's like, would you like a picture? And I'm like, yeah. So he took the photo, and then after everything was said and done, and he said, nice to meet you. Thank you so much. But I'm sure he was also, again, a little freaked out. But after everything was said and done, I just left and went home and did laundry. And it was shockingly anticlimactic. Like, I thought in this moment, I was like, this is when the universe is going to open up to you. This is when people start, because I tweeted everything out. I was like, I crashed the Grammys. Like, I did this little YouTube video. I thought that I would get so much coverage for that in my head of all of these media outlets reaching out to me being like, wow, you crashed the Grammys. Tell us how it was. And I was
this is how I start dating Pete.
Yeah, exactly. I wish I still have not dated Pete, but Pete, I am still single. If you are single, it's been many years. And thank you again for not getting that restraining order. But yeah, I think in my head in that moment, I just thought that I thought that I had made it to a certain degree, and all it did was teach me that was just the very, very, very beginning of a long ride. But it was cool because it taught me that, again, where there's a will, there's a way, and learning to trust my gut and knowing that if I had spent an extra half hour putting on makeup, I probably wouldn't have been there at that exact moment. There was something in my gut that was like, get in the car, don't walk, run, go now. You need to be there right now. And I listened and I did. And then that was great because that got the attention of Ford. So then I became part of the Ford Fiesta movement, and I was a Chapter 2 agent. And so they gave us a car. I had a partner at the time. They gave us a car and a gas card. So I loved the movie Reality Bites as a kid, and that's what the main character, Elena Pierce, did. She used her father's gas card to get cash, but I'm not that kind of person, nor would I even want to do that because I'm not, kind of a thief in that regard. But I did, unfortunately, take, beef jerky and a skinny water here and there. And then I just took a look at my life, at that point, and I was like, I really just want to start this blog. I don't know how to write a business plan. I don't know anything other than I'm really good at doing things. When I set my mind to him, I'm like, why can't I just do this? I was like, why do I need an apartment? Why do I need a house? Why do I need anything? I was like, I can just live out of the car and, start with Ford as my first sponsor. It was influencer marketing, 8 years before there was a term for it, and see what else I can leverage. So my first weekend without a home, I stayed in a $10,000 a night suite hotel over at the Shangri-La, or at the Shangri-La Hotel in Santa Monica. We stayed in the penthouse. I flew on private jets. I had food, water, clothing, shelter, and became friends with so many random celebrities, all just by teaching them social media or walking up to, there used to be this great pizza spot called Pizza Fusion over on Sunset, walking into a pizza place and being like, hey, can I have some pizza in exchange for teaching you YouTube? They thought that was so weird, but it worked every single time because I reached out to people. I was like, I really like your product. Can I just, have this in exchange? And again, it started with, food, water, clothing, very, Maslow hierarchy of needs.
Basic stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And then it just grew into so many different things. But the companies loved it because, I knew the people that were charging $12,000 just to set up a Twitter page. No strategy, nothing, just to set up a page. And I'm like, good for you. You just got that much money. But I'm like, you're not helping them at all. And they're now going to look back at social media and think this is a horrible thing.
There's no value exchange there.
Exactly. But there was no quantifiable like monetary value attached to social media at that time. So that was the thing. If I liked your product, I was willing to talk about it, and I would just come up with a really cool story and a really cool narrative to figure out how to survive. But got to 12 states with $10 to my name. And yeah.
And that's like the origination of UGC, user generated content.
Exactly.
Which is now a multi-million-dollar industry of how do I get people to organically talk or use products like Clout.com. That was their whole thing.
Exactly. But that was the thing. This is what I could see. Like, I also had worked as a model previously, and I knew from live video, I was like, I have all these eyeballs on me. It was like, again, this truck just coming down the street so fast. I was so ridiculously rabid at that point and crazy. But again, knowing that I wasn't crazy because I had the paperwork, I saw all of this stuff so clearly in my head that this was where the future was going in terms of social. And I wanted to be a part of it. And then that's how I indirectly became, so involved in the LA tech scene, was because I was just, one of the, I won't say first because the LA tech scene's actually been around for a while, but the new media tech scene, I was so passionate about it. I was just always there and always sort of, up to something, but it was never, my friends were all going to these events looking for jobs, and I was just interested in learning about the platforms or learning something new. I didn't go there looking necessarily for work. I was just more interested in an adventure. So
yeah, you had more of an honest intention when it comes to that.
Truly.
And that's the biggest thing. Like, a lot of people ask me, they're like, how do you have all these friends that do all these amazing things? Like, how do you have friends that are on TV? And how do you have friends that are these famous, like, touring artists? I'm like, because I don't want anything from them.
Exactly.
That's the number one thing that most people ask is, how are you when they meet with me? Like, how do I meet with this person? I'm like, that's not what I'm going to be able to teach you. I'm going to teach you how to end up in a circle with that person. And realistically, it's the other people that you never ended up wanting to meet or thought you needed to meet that are going to vouch for you so much so that that person wants to be in a room with you.
Well, I keep getting so many chills having this conversation, Ashwin. This is just so amazing because I'm so passionate about the story. But it was funny, or not funny necessarily, but when I was moving into the car for Talk Nerdy, I had 6 little compartments set up in the back, and they were these like little leopard compartments. I had an extra monitor. I basically broke everything down to absolute bottom lines. I was like, I needed as much tech backup as I could. So like, if my screen cracked, I had to have an external screen. If my computer messed up, I had to have like an external keyboard, or just anything for that. So that was always the number one priority. But I was crying as I was moving into the car, like pretty hysterically, because I was just like, I'm from Connecticut. I'm from a well-to-do family. Like, this is a very illogical thing.
I should not be homeless.
Yeah, but again, I wasn't homeless. I choose to urban camp.
Yeah.
It was, and I learned that also along the way as well, that, people that are homeless truly, at least from the majority of perspective, do genuinely have some sort of mental illness and absolutely need some help. But I chose to urban camp, but it was very illogical. So again, as dramatic cliche moments continue to exist in life, my very good friend Noah called me in that moment as I'm putting these little leopard cubes in the back of the Ford Fiesta. And he goes, Jen, I have someone for you. He's like, do you know the show The Big Bang Theory? And I just started wailing. So when I started Talk Nerdy Me Lover, I set up the online reputation management for basically our SEO to be found by their online reputation manager. So I specifically wanted to attach Talk Nerdy to The Big Bang Theory. And so I would tag certain posts. I came up with this whole concept around Sheldon, like in branding and whatnot, just to have the SEO that someone somewhere that would be watching this would notice the blog. Well, I didn't know that it totally worked. And I didn't know that a very good friend of mine happened to be very good friends with Kaylee Cuoco, who was a fan. And he's like, she loves your blog. Can we just get the cast some t-shirts? And again, having $10 to my name meant that I couldn't print the t-shirts. But in that moment, I just lost it. I started wailing. Noah is hilarious. He's, by his own admission, a former Italian gangster. And he just started crying too. He's like, why are we crying? I'm like, you don't understand. I was like, I'm doing what I'm doing. I just can't see the full picture yet. Because I'm like, I didn't know I needed a sort of validation in that moment that what I was doing was right, quote unquote. But I got it. And it was just from the most unexpected source, just coming from such a genuine place, as you're saying.
No, I mean, I used to tell people, I've always been very defined by my businesses. There's a picture that Gary Vaynerchuk has on his social media. It's him in grade school, and it's a photo. He's an arrow down to him. He's like, I sold all of these other kids candy. That was one of my first businesses. I sold candy. Then I was like, okay, what do kids want? Hall passes. Got a hall pass once. I kept it, Made a photocopy, went to Staples, figured out how to do that, made fake IDs, did a whole bunch of like gray area things and like just trialed and errored a lot of different types of businesses. And it'd always be defined. It's like, he's the guy you go to for candy. He's the guy you go to for fake IDs. And then when I was in college, he's the guy you go to get alcohol, you know, all these random businesses. And ultimately what I've realized is when I moved out to LA, I was a talent manager, and that's what I did. And then I was a producing partner on a different couple of projects. Then I was a consultant and a strategist. Realistically, I ended up changing my whole mindset. And now when people ask me what I do, if I meet somebody at a bar or somebody's like, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, I'm a life enthusiast. I basically built up a decent following on a couple of my social media platforms. A lot of people look to me as an authority because I've done like noteworthy deals and worked with noteworthy enough clients that I do whatever inspires me in that day that I can do something to make an impact or leave a legacy. Absolutely. And that's a way better way to live your life. Like instead of being like, I just need to be at a desk, I need to get a guarantee. I'd rather do stuff that gets me a real meaning. I think that's a lot of what you've done is you've built a brand that people trust your opinion. Like you're also one of the few people I would say that I think has a way better network than me because you know equally as many different types of people from a very different type of background.
Well, that was the conversation that you and I had, like even just, you know, a couple months ago. This is what happens when you get older. Time gets very strange. But it's one of these things where, you know, I don't really change. I mean, aspects of my personality, I might be quieter, I might be like more outgoing in certain situations. But other than that, I'm fundamentally speaking the same person in any scenario that I'm in. So if I see that someone needs help with something, or I'm mostly the go-to person for a lot of things. But also with that, it's like, it's again, there's a double-edged sword with that I've recently discovered in becoming a personal brand is also you end up at this stage where you feel like you owe your audience a certain degree of something. And I've seen this a lot with content creators and whatnot, with YouTubers. And I saw it within myself in 2013. I recognized it. I was like, I was actually worked for IOLA and bartered having office space there in exchange for helping out with their events. One of them happened to be the Tech for Obama campaign. But I had this goal of getting something to trend on Twitter because at the time it would cost $250,000. That was like their rate to get a sponsored tweet. And but I was fascinated by what the algorithm was, which isn't technically an algorithm, which is what I found out. But I wanted to know what it was like to get something to trend and how to figure out how to hack it. So we wound up getting Tech for Obama to trend. And it was hands down the best night of my life at that time with this goal. And I'm like, I had no one to share it with. So I had done all of this stuff. I had created this personal brand and I had all these connections and this phenomenal network of people. I was the go-to people. People in Hollywood were calling me. I was meeting with VCs of studios, like, you know, things that like I never even remotely thought, like in heads of studios, like things that I just never even imagined were already happening. But I recognized in that moment how unhappy I was and that I couldn't keep going. And I did for 6 months. I couldn't keep going at the rate that I was going until going back to what we were talking about earlier. Like I learned more to love myself and to stop seeking that validation to such a degree and to have intimacy within myself and that quote unquote personal brand. I became a person and not a persona. And that took a really long time to figure out. But once it did, now it's like, you're kind of like, I wouldn't say back and better than ever, but I approach things so differently that I don't have that level of creative exhaustion. And
you're
I don't
happier.
feel like, yeah.
That's what it is. It's core level of happiness.
Yeah. And it's like, and it's again, even like learning, like I did last week, learning how to take a vacation. Like things start to become so much more fulfilling and you're still doing the same things and or, you know, slightly different than you were doing before. But there's not that fatigue within it that I feel like I didn't understand previously. Because I wouldn't go off the internet for less than 24 hours. I would say if I was gone for even an afternoon, I'm like, I'm irrelevant right now. I don't know what's going on in the world, so I can't give you advice on something. That's how seriously I took this.
No, I feel you. Because for me, it's like if I wasn't at the right events or if I wasn't at the right parties, people would be like, well, why aren't you here? And I'm like, I want to go to the beach.
Absolutely.
I want to go to the beach. I wanted to try and longboard. Like, do you longboard? I'm like, I'm not good at it. It just makes me happy trying and like just doing something. And I think that's the big issue that a lot of people get caught up in is they need to be successful because they think once you get this one more thing or once you meet this one more person, you're going to be fulfilled. And it's really not that. I think fulfillment is being happy in your right now every single day.
Absolutely. But you exactly hit the nail on the head with this too. It's like and even I can speak from this in my own life experience right now, there's always going to be another mountain to climb. There's always going to be like any level, and I'm sure as you know too, like when you're friends with these people that are at this stage of success, and especially if they have a ton of money, anybody that has like, basically FU money, but to such a degree that they can say FU times however many, those are some of the most interestingly, sometimes difficult people to deal with because they're so afraid of losing everything that they have. Like you have to decide for yourself what success looks like, whether that's monetary, whether that's based in relationships, whether that's professional. You have to decide what your measurement of success is, because there will always be more. You're always going to think like, oh, well, I can go that little bit, or I can go do this. But if all of these buckets aren't, equally sort of filled, you're not overall going to be fulfilled. Yes, okay, you might have, $500 million in the bank. But, how's your dating life? How's your family? How are your friends? Like, what's going on with work? Do you want to do something else? Are you happy doing what you're doing? There are just these buckets that we have to fill. But at any given moment, we can think that we want more.
It's like the movie All the Money in the World.
Exactly.
Guy was the richest person in the world, but at the end of the day, he didn't want to separate with any of his money.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, he still died at the end of the film, and all that money ended up in his estate.
And that's the thing. But it also, too, it comes back to, who we all are really at our core, and that I couldn't be that person. I'm personally not that person. And money hasn't ever been a motivator to me. But it's like, if that was, it's like, okay, cool. Then you do you, boo. Like, if that's really what you're about, that's great.
So what's your primary motivator?
What's my primary motivator? I'm phenomenally curious. I need to learn. I need to learn something new every day. That's why I was just telling you, I actually want to go on Jeopardy, and I'm planning on doing so. So I'm already strategizing out how that's going to occur. I love either hearing something new from someone in terms of, it could be something as silly as a story at a bar, or something new on Jeopardy, or just, wow, at work today, I accomplished this new task, or was able to problem solve in this way that I didn't really see. I like to connect dots. I'm really good at studying patterns, and that to me is very fulfilling. But I just like challenges as well, and I need to keep doing new things. So I get bored so easily. Yeah,
I think what made me crack up one of the first times I met you was you're talking about your show, and you mentioned you're like, and also I met with the producers, but I had a Fin slave. Give me this thing. I'm like, well, wait, hold up. And you're like, I'm also a dominatrix on the side. And I'm like, how did you end up getting into that? And then you're like, you should read this post. And then you sent it to me a while ago. I read it through and I was like, damn, that's so manipulative. You set like these little tricks inside of your thing to trip up this guy. And it was such a gnarly experience.
Well, see, that's it. So I guess, my Myers-Briggs is INTJ, which, again, you can anchor yourself to astrology, Myers-Briggs, whatever, like it kind of is. But it just, the second I read it, made phenomenal amount of sense. I always have my hands in 100 different things, because that's how I feel like I'm really good at what I do, is I'm able to take this life experience and this thing that I had over here and connect those dots. With being a dominatrix, or technically a dom, I not only found my own voice more so in the process, because like even at that time, like I couldn't even talk dirty in bed, because like I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of my mouth, no pun intended. But then it was just sort of like this slippery slope. But it started in 2012. I posted this tweet being like, my feet hurt from running, and because I'd been so open about so much of my life, this gentleman responded back with this very, very personal email saying that, he's had this feeling his whole life of a lot of shame. And he's like, can I rub your feet? I would love to teach you this world and all of the above. And, being the insanely curious person that I am, I'm like, absolutely. I was like, let's go down the rabbit hole. So not only did I get my first slave, but I got a sponsorship from Nike for my shoes, which is amazing. Thank you, Nike. And and after I had one, I just started documenting it. And it's still to this day the most popular series of posts that I've ever written. So when it came to repackaging the show and whatnot, it was such a no-brainer. But I have to, at any given time when I do choose to take on a slave, I have to stay one step mentally ahead of them at all times. So it's not like, it is manipulative. Absolutely. We're all
it's a game. I think that's the purpose of it. Is a lot of the people that you look into that are very into bondage are even on the show Billions.
Oh, they're
extremely highly successful, extremely intelligent people that want an escape and a switch from being in charge.
Exactly.
Because being in charge is like, for me, I'm usually like the leader of a lot of situations that I'm in. sometimes when I go out with friends and they want to go to a dive bar or something like that, and we're waiting in line, they're like, why don't you call somebody to get around the line? Or if it's even like a friend, I have friends that own nightclubs in Miami and in New York and a couple of other big cities, and people will be like, why don't you like to cut the line? I'm like, I kind of like having this regular experience and doing it like having somebody else be in charge. Let the door guy and the person in the line that's trying to hustle something be in charge.
But you hit the nail on the head, and that was actually my first experience with that first slave. I could be sitting next to him in a meeting or at a dinner and have no idea. He was into what they call he wanted to be dehumanized. So for him, he wore a mask. Again, I never saw his face, and we actually met in a park first, which was kind of funny. It was a very quiet park.
Wearing a mask?
Yeah, wearing a mask. Oh yeah, and that's when he first rubbed my feet. But he was really into, and I have photos of this from Talk Nerdy back in the day, but he was really into sort of being my table. So he has a family, he has kids. He's like I said, a high-powered executive. I didn't ask any questions, past that. And he was just really into, me literally blogging and or tweeting about whatever it was that I was tweeting about. And he just happened to be there. So you go in a very zen-like state in that moment and you're like, I'm tweeting about my day, because it has nothing to do with him. He literally wants to be in a space where he's not the most important person in the room. He's actually the table. It's all psychologically driven, which I find fascinating. And for me, especially at that time, it was before I had moved to the island. So I was trying to understand intimacy. And as strange as it sounds, but this is like one of the most intimate things that, this person was experiencing, because he couldn't feel like he could be his whole self with his wife or with his family or even at his job. He needed someone to help him, have this release.
Be vulnerable.
Exactly. But it was never sexual. And that was something I was very clear. I didn't want to do it for money. It wasn't about sex. It was for me about the life experience. They always brought a gift of some kind. It was either like, because that's what they call a tribute. It was either like shoes or wine, because, those are both amazing. And that was it. But it was just one right after the other. And then when I came back recently, that FinDom post that I showed you, I about a year ago took on another slave. And as a dom, it is a lot of responsibility. I mean, you have to, again, be psychologically one step ahead of them. So I would set alarms on my phone. Slave failed. I would have I called it my Trello board of torture, where it was basically like project.
That's a project management software.
Yeah. So it really is. It's project management software, but I had to come up with all of these different ideas that at any given moment, if I felt like he wasn't paying enough attention to me, I would have to give these commands. So, and I would set him up like you're saying in one of the emails when we first started, and this was all done via email in his case. I never talked to him on the phone. I never saw him in person. He lived in Hawaii. I actually did find out he was married because he made the mistake of one of the gifts he sent with the gift receipt having his actual name on it, which was stupid, but that's why he was a slave that I no longer have because of it. But basically I told him, I was like, I want you to stop everything that you're doing right now, because you set it up that they receive the notifications from you. So as I'm sending the emails and whatnot, it's popping up on his phone, and I commanded him to keep his phone on him at all times. So I sent him this email. And I said, I want you to stop what you're doing right now and kiss the floor and take a picture of it and tell me when you're ready. The tell me when you're ready was everything, because that was going to teach me so much about him. I knew that the majority of people would be super eager beaver, I'm going to send you this picture and just send it right away just because they're so excited to get the task done. If he was detail oriented, he would see that last line, which would mean that that's a horse of a different color in slave terms. And that means that literally I have to stay on top of him even more. So by him just sending the photo immediately meant that he failed. And then, then he had to be punished.
That's a trap. That's a trap. Because it's like grammar. It's like spelling school stuff, like elementary stuff that most people would never think about in actual application. It trips people out when they find out. I was friends with the adult actress who told me of some of the clients that she's worked with, and it tripped me out when she dropped a couple of names.
Yeah.
It kind of came out, and it was gnarly at the level of power or influence that a lot of these people had.
Absolutely. But that's the thing. And at the end of the day, it's, I genuinely consider what I do almost being like a priest in that regard. Both
You're a therapist, basically.
Yeah, with Talk Nerdy in general and being a dom, I take all of that to the grave. And even certain stories, I never change the actual structure of the story or anything that happens, but I have to change around the details to sort of protect my friends. But you're in this moment with someone, and it's such a vulnerable life experience for them. And, again, but you're having to stay one step ahead of it at all time. It is a phenomenal amount of work. But as someone that likes challenges and as someone that's an insanely curious person, I like to have experiences and explore things.
And then you worked it into your Jerry Bruckheimer show. And the initial pitch, which I thought was hilarious.
Well, it
makes it more of a story, because people oftentimes think that they need a certain skill set. And the thing that I figured out is I am not a technical person in a lot of things. I'm a strategist, I'm a consultant, I'm a creative. Most people buy into me and want to work with me because of the story of who I am and where I came from. Absolutely. So I think that made it much more interesting for that creative team that, wow, she's incorporating this into the story.
Absolutely.
And into the actual meeting, the business aspect of it too.
Absolutely, yeah. So I was very involved in the second version. It's myself and the writer. I mean, we've been in the trenches together for, like I said, 19 months, and now we're just taking it out to pitch. But I mean, and it's phenomenal timing. Like, we did not mean the Me Too movement happened while we were working on this. We were already we had months previously decided, because initially I was like, well, the original, pilot wasn't anything really like the story of launching Talk Nerdy Me Lover. So it was my intention to have the show be about like launching Talk Nerdy Me Lover and what that meant. So we put it together and it was so boring. I was just like, it's not that it's boring necessarily, but it was just unbelievable that like all these things would keep happening to this one person. But literally aliens probably could land right now. I'd befriend them and, learn their language. I'm a people magnet, and I just have very interesting experiences. And as someone who's naturally curious, I attract a lot of things. But in terms of television, I wouldn't watch that show. So we scrapped everything. And then I just went from an analytical perspective, like I said, and said, this is the most popular series of posts that I've ever written. I said, this is what this needs to be. And we just flushed out the characters, flushed out the world. But it's similar to Barry in the sense that it's kind of not what you would expect. It's like, oh, here's this assassin, but it's a dramedy. We're taking something that's been done before, but presenting it in an entirely new way, all based on very, very true stories. And I couldn't be more prouder. Even right now, I've been celebrating after every single meeting. I've celebrated instead of before, where it was like I was living on an island at the time. I didn't really know much of what was going on. And it was very anticlimactic because I kept getting these emails from my agents, not even phone calls, like, hey, your blog, just congratulations. Your blog just sold to NBC. And you're like, what? I just had such a different life experience with it previously and was kind of so out of the loop. And then when it was up for pilot season back in 2016, Les Moonves picked The Great Indoors instead of Talk Nerdy. But I was so stressed out the whole time. Instead of celebrating that, I'm like, Les Moonves knows my name, which now is probably a different thing.
It's a different conversation.
Yeah, now it's a different conversation now. But you know what I mean? Again, just being there meant how amazing that was. And so every single meeting, every single anything with this pitch, I've just celebrated the fact that we got here. We got in this room. I'm meeting this person. I cannot even believe this life experience is happening.
Plus, you're talking about authenticity. I remember I think it was about 2 months ago when we were at the W. You're like, yeah, I'm leaving to meet up with a lot of the team. They're curious about my life, so I'm going to take them to this
that's right.
bondage club or something like that.
Yeah, I went to the S&M club that night.
Yeah, right after. How did that experience go with that very conservative team? So you're like, this is going to be a trip.
I completely forgot that was the same night. Yeah. So I was super excited to introduce you to my friend Mike. And, but yeah, so we, oh my God, I forgot about that. So
you're like, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird right now. It's a weird weekend. Maybe there'll be a sub to massage my feet at this party in front of my team. And I'm like, that's so funny.
But had no idea. But again, I'm always, and you're 100% right in saying that, it's the authenticity in the experience. It's like, I've already done it. The Phoenix is still there. So the club is down the street. Oh goodness, I'm blanking. It's Bordner's, but it's called something. Oh, Bar Sinister. So it's called Bar Sinister on Saturdays, and Phoenix still works there. I saw him, but instead of choosing to get flogged or, I dressed in a very dom capacity with a cape sort of midriff style shirt, this red skirt, and I wore garters, you walk in turning heads, not because you're a female or you look hot. It's because the dom energy gets recognized immediately, and I can immediately go into that mode, which is what I did. But what was really interesting for me was just going back. I had reread the post that I wrote. I hadn't been there in 6 years. So I reread the post that I had originally written after the experience, and I could not believe how accurate it was. I was high-fiving myself as a writer, because you always wonder if you're seeing things based upon how you think you see things or how far they actually are. I could have told you where there was a crack in that club, and in the way that I sort of described it, it was so accurate. I was like, this is out of this world. So I was really proud of that. But the executives were completely freaked out, and that turns me on, and I enjoyed it very much because they were so out of their comfort zone. And, it was funny. One of the females, she just wouldn't stop talking to me and asking me all of these questions. And I could tell how nervous she was, but I was just like, I can only handle it to a certain degree. And especially in that mode, I'm in Dom mode. So she didn't, I didn't view her as being involved in any sort of executive capacity. I viewed her as a sub that was speaking out of place. So that was interesting, but it was also really cool. There was the amateur porn nights or something that happened to be that night, like an award show. So I came home with the best goodie bag that I've ever had from any party in Los Angeles.
That's too funny. That is wonderful. Too funny. Kind of like where I like to go with a lot of people is there's a lot of success, a lot of amazing things that you've been able to do. One of the things that most people don't like to open up about is the failures. But I think you learn a lot from your failures. I think with the show specifically, like, you were in a precarious situation, 4-way bidding bar. Yeah. How do you go about dealing with like the loss of that not actually getting made and spending those past 19 months that you said?
Yeah, you have no idea. So basically, exactly that. I had what they call in Hollywood a PUP pilot. So not only was I, Mary Parent, who had previously optioned Talk Nerdy Me, not only was I her first TV pilot, but I was Bruckheimer's very first TV comedic pilot. So if the stars could have been shining on anything, and to have it in a 4-way bidding war with the broadcast networks and have something called a PUP pilot, which means a pilot with a penalty, so that if they don't end up producing the show, you get paid. So then I'm also looking at it going like, this is a win-win. I'm at least getting my pilot episode money. I had already gotten 2 checks at that point during the option process because it got optioned twice. And I'm like, this is amazing. I was like, this is so cool. And then I wound up stressing myself out so much in the process because, again, in the initial sale, I wasn't here, but I stressed myself out so much in the process. I was like, I can't deal with this. So I left, went on a little mini vacation. And then when I found out it didn't sell, it was just heartbreaking. But it was like in my mind, I was like, this is the little engine that could. And I called my agents and she's like, this is what agents tell you. They're like, this is a very special project. But what Les does historically, I found out, is that he waits until the very last second for, his picks. So basically when you pick the great indoors, I don't know enough about the industry that if it could have gone back to those other parties, but he does that specifically so that, anybody else can't kind of get those properties that he passes on. So, and then unfortunately in June, Warner Brothers and Bruckheimer ended their almost 20-year relationship. So I didn't know that at the time, but I called my agents in August or September when I knew the option was up and I was like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, oh, okay, well, I don't know if it's going to be renewed, but we'll find a place for it. It's a very special project. And I just remember driving, hearing that news, going, no.
So I like you, but in a different type of way.
I have to do this myself now. And I'm like, no. And at this year, it had been that was back in 2016. It had been 6 years of generals, of meetings. But now I had this phenomenal, like you're saying, phenomenal network of people that I knew at least liked and respected me. And the fact that Bruckheimer, had attached his name to it and I had all this press that people could genuinely look at. It was all over the trades. I was in the trades and then I was on a CNBC show 2 weeks apart from each other. So I came back from this island with quite the bang. And so I literally just picked up the phone. I pitched to studio heads. I pitched to attorneys. I pitched to agents. I pitched to managers. I discovered I'm actually not very good at pitching the show because I came in with a distribution strategy and creative strategy. And it wasn't until I met my attorney, actually, my now attorney, who introduced me to this amazing writer. And she and I could not have done this without her. She had a very successful show on Cinemax. She is literally like my sister now. And we're just creative, sort of kindred spirits. But she was the one who was able to say, Jen, I need you to go in this mode right now. Okay, talk about this. Because again, I operate from both almost executive capacity and creative, which that freaked, when I went straight to studio heads, that freaked them out. And production companies too, they're like, why are you telling us what distribution strategies you want this for? They just thought that was very
People
strange.
You're either a business executive or you're creative.
Exactly, but
you can't do both.
But
and
exactly.
That's where they'll get tripped out.
So basically I would leave meetings thinking, I'm like, oh wow, this is so great. And it just never ended up going anywhere. And I kept getting pass after pass after pass. And I even tried creating a sizzle reel to sell the story. I tried everything that I could in my power, but it wasn't until the stars really aligned with this writer. And even then it was a process because we had to develop it out. I mean, character development and just, we have the first 3 seasons already outlined. We have the pilot now completed, but we have to understand a series arc and like where these characters could go. But then you have to leave enough to people to get them to bite, to be like, well, we could see it go in this direction. So you have to leave just enough for someone like a Bruckheimer type to come in and say, well, we really want to take it this way. So it's really all been a phenomenally interesting process, and to see the industry changing so rapidly, and to now totally accidentally have a background in both is crazy. But I'm like, statistically speaking, how many people like could have even gotten here? That's again why like I'm celebrating all of this. I'm like, it was such a not sad moment. It was just a heavy moment once I found out the option wasn't renewed, because I just didn't know what I could do next. And again, it was just utilizing your network, being as genuine as you can, and just morning, noon, and night with every last, it's like, I thought I was blood, sweat, and tears previously. It's like, I didn't know what that term meant until I had a tech startup and was pitching this TV show at the same time, or technically, creating it. So it's a lot of work. I can't say I've been happy through it the whole time. I think anybody that tells you it's sunshine and rainbows, they're completely full of it. I've thought, why me in the process, which is also hilarious. I kind of went through this moment of feeling sorry for myself.
The grind and the misery is what makes it a process. Yeah,
like which is crazy, because I'm like, there are so many starving people in this world, and you're pitying yourself because Bruckheimer attached his name to your show that you now have to go and take out. It's like, come on, let's focus on reality. But the reality was that's what I was experiencing. And it's just like, every day, every meeting, anything that I could do in this moment to keep it going, I did. And again, that's why it's so fun being here right now. But we'll see. I mean, it still hasn't sold, so we'll see. It's all the narrative is still unfolding, but
you just got to love the journey.
Yeah, but like actually love it this time and really mean it. And again, that celebration I feel like is so crucial, because you just walk in with like a different energy. You're not thinking about, oh, this person passed, or oh, this meeting didn't happen the way you thought it would, or oh, whatever. It's like you're just walking in like every time with such a fresh start, because you did it, you got here, and all of it is a celebration.
That's awesome. Now, what are some of the projects that you're currently working on other than the show, and where can people find you online?
Yeah, so you guys can check out the blog talknerdytomelover.com. That's also my Instagram is talknerdytomelover. I'm pretty much Jen Friel on everything else, JenFriel. But please reach out to me though. I'm very serious. I'll even give you guys my email address. It's Jen, Jen, at dropininc, DROPIN.com. If any of you are in insurance of all things, Drop In Inc. We do live video processing for claims. I'd love to chat with you. And other than that, I don't know. I never really know what's next. I'm just kind of on this little journey and adventure, and we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But it's so awesome having you as a friend. And, like I said, even when we were chatting at the W, kind of hearing your own stories, I'm so excited to be on this podcast, because I just think you're super interesting, and I just can't wait to learn more.
No, thanks. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into the New Hollywood Podcast. It's your host, Ashwin Jacob. We're going to be everywhere that you can download a podcast. So Spotify, probably LinkedIn once they release a video, Facebook, YouTube, all platforms. So be sure to follow, like, and subscribe, share with a friend, and be tuned in when we bring in our next interesting guest.